everyone. So sorry that I can't be with you live today. We ended up with a last minute trip that I got to run into town, which is 2.5 hours away. When I say town, we actually have to run into the city today. So I really apologize for not being here live, but I wanted to make sure that we covered this information. I didn't want to cancel it on you. So I have pre-recorded this training for you. I hope you enjoy. If you have any questions, never hesitate to reach out to me. You can do it via Slack. You can do it, text me. You can post your questions in the chat box, and Abby will make sure that she gets me over everybody's questions, and then I'll get back to you with answers on those. So hopefully you find this class beneficial. We're talking about working with buyers today, the buyer presentation. The screen says getting your offers accepted. We're not going to spend so much time on that, mainly just talking about that buyer process and who to sit down with, and then how to move through that process. So here we go. Let's get started working with buyers today. We're going to talk about our learning objectives, the steps in the buyer process, buyer qualification and consultation, the art of showing homes, and we're going to touch on buyer's market versus seller's market versus what we've been in for the last, couple of years, which has been the weirdest market that you will ever experience. Probably, I don't know. I say that and then it'll probably go really crazy next year. Who knows? But anyways, those are our learning objectives today. First off, we always touch on lead generation because that is your main job as a realtor, is to generate those leads. That's what's going to bring you consistent business to your plate and keep you going so that you don't have lean months. So generating buyer leads is your primary responsibility. You are not in the real estate business. You are in the business of lead generation. The more time that you spend generating that steady supply of leads, as I previously mentioned, the more robust, predictable, and successful your business will be, right? So in the beginning, as a realtor, you're probably going to spend more time with buyers than sellers because buyers are often easier to attract. And there's a little bit more skill involved with winning listings. And that's not to say that you can't do both. But the majority of new agent business ranges from about 70 to 90% buyers. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. Our goal would be to kind of get it to like a 50 to 60% buyers, the rest be listings. And as we mentioned, every time we talk about lead generation, we talk about leads from listings, and that's one of the reasons we really want to be listing focused, is that we're going to generate additional leads from those listings. We still usually end up being a little bit buyer heavy because oftentimes our sellers are also buyers. So we're getting, that would make it like 50-50, and then we're generating additional buyer leads from sign calls and different things like that. So some ways that you can specifically attract buyers would be things like open houses, internet or online leads for those of you that are working on the Zillow team, your farm, that you're probably going to get both listings and buyers, your circle of influence, right? That COI or your database, mailers, social media, networking, door knocking, circle prospecting, and referrals, right? So there's lots of different ideas there on the screen of ways to generate leads. If you want to dive into almost any of those methods, you can hop on to my YouTube channel. We did our 12 days of systems class this year, where we dove into some different types of lead gen, some ways to think outside the box with like open houses and the farm, referrals, and your database. We also did like 12 days of lead gen last December that you can find on there. We covered, I actually think it was 11 different types of lead generation. So if you want some ideas of what different methods look like, that's a good way to dig into it. And as always, when it comes to lead gen, you should always make your database your primary objective. Dig into that database, okay? Those people who already know you, love you, trust you, or at least know you, you're going to have an easier time winning business from them than strangers. The second method of lead gen should always be leads from listings, right? We're going to generate additional leads from our listings. My goal is always 3 leads from every listing that I have, although you could make it higher than that. And then you're going to choose 3 additional lead gen methods, to which you're going to dig into systems and processes with one specifically. look to perfect that and master it. Once you master it and you're consistently running that lead gen method, then you're going to work to add those additional 2 methods one at a time. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be dabbling in the other 2 of those 3 additional lead gen methods at all times, but we're not going to work to perfect all 3 at the same time because you're going to get overwhelmed and you're not going to do anything. So circle of influence or your database, leads from listings, and then those 3 additional lead gen methods. I always recommend for new agents, open houses. It's one of the easiest ways, I think, to generate leads. You've got people walking through that door. In addition, you should have systems and processes around your open houses. You can host them for other agents. Those systems and processes should include door knocking, posting social media. It should be working to actually generate leads as part of that marketing side of the process for those open houses. So there you go. You want to attract buyers is our primary objectives. The buyer process, right? We want to qualify our buyers. So we want to make sure that they're ready, willing, and able. We'll dig into that more. I often recommend doing a buyer presentation, and you want to hook them up with your lender. So step 1, buyer qualification is going to be to pre-qualify, make sure they're ready, willing, and able. You're going to do the set up or refer them over to a lender. Then you want to do a buyer consultation to make sure everybody's on the same page moving forward with that buying process. During that process, you want to make sure to get that BRBC sign, that buyer representation and broker compensation form. After that, we're going to start showing properties, right? Each property should either be considered or eliminated. Once we select the property, then we're going to draw up that offer and negotiate the offer with the goal of getting it accepted, at which point we're going to open escrow. Then we're going to take care of the steps in the pending path, which culminate with the CDA. That's going to be all your inspections, removing contingencies, the appraisal, getting initial documents into the lender. Then we're going to get to a point where you're going to get issued what's called the CD is going to be issued by the lender, assuming that you have a financed transaction, not a cash transaction. Once that closing disclosure is issued, you wait 3 days before you can sign your final loan documents and your final closing documents with the title company. That all gets done at the same time. Once we sign at the title company, this is really important. So we have our CDA, or our closing disclosure, our CD, and then we have 3 days that we wait. Then we sign our final loan documents. Then those loan documents and all the closing documents get sent back to the lender for review. Then the lender is going to fund it. So usually we sign one day, the lender usually funds the next day. And then the paperwork gets submitted to the county recorder's office to actually record the transaction. So from the time, and sometimes on the day that it funds, it can also record. Sometimes it's the next day. So once that closing disclosure is issued, the fastest that you're going to get keys to your buyer is going to be probably 5 days, maybe 6 days. So kind of keep that in mind as you move through this process. It's not like sometimes you see on TV where they're at the closing table and they're signing their documents and they're like, oh, I get keys, and they walk away. It doesn't work like that in California. It does work like that in other states, but not in California. So just kind of be aware that closing disclosure gets issued. We wait 3 days, they sign, the next day it funds, and we'll assume it records that same next day. So that gives you about 5 days. Okay. Once it's recorded, that's when you're officially on record. That's when the buyer officially owns the property, and that's when the buyer takes possession. So that's kind of the buyer process in a nutshell. All right, the buyer questionnaire. When we get somebody who raises their hand and is like, I want to buy a house, okay, we want to schedule the consultation meeting. And we usually want to try to do that after we send them to the lender for pre-qualification. In an ideal world, they would get pre-qualified before we sit down with them. But just know that sometimes things don't work ideally. And sometimes I'll spend my time and sit down with a buyer and go through that buyer consultation appointment as a way to kind of alleviate fears and help move them into the purchase process, versus sending them to the lender first. And the reason that I do that is sometimes they're reluctant to call a lender because they're not even sure they're going to work out. Ideally, we like them to get pre-qualified before we spend our time with them, because until they're pre-qualified, we don't know that they're ready, willing, and able, which is our goal, is to only spend time with ready, willing, and able buyers. But sometimes spending time with them to build that relationship is important. So it doesn't always have to be lender first and then consultation, although in the ideal world, that's how we would roll it. Okay. Again, as always, if you guys have any questions, you can throw them in that chat box. Abby will get them over to me, or feel free to message me directly or even call and say, hey, Amy, I want to schedule some time with you. Totally okay to do that as well. Okay. This homework assignment, this buyer questionnaire, I'll make sure that Abby can throw that into the chat box or send it to those that log your attendance at the end of this training, so that you have a copy of this. This might be something that you want to send to a buyer, or even something that you may want to create in like a Google form or a Jot form. I would do a Google form that you can send over to a buyer and let them know, like, we schedule the buyer appointment. Hey, I'm going to send you a link to complete a form. That's going to be their homework. Okay. It's going to allow your buyers to put their thoughts down on something so that you can go over that with them during that buyer consultation or during that pre-qualification process. Okay. So how it would look is, hey, the next step in the process is to meet to determine exactly what it is that you're looking for. Plus, this is going to allow me the opportunity to get acquainted with you. You get acquainted with our team and our system for finding you the right property. Does that sound good? When's a good time to meet in my office? That's how the script rolls. I probably wouldn't say when's a good time. I would probably go into, do mornings or afternoons work better for you? Right? And get them to answer that. Perfect. If they're like afternoons, be like, perfect. Does 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock work better for you? Right? We want to lead them into a time and stay in charge of our schedule, not just be like, oh, I'm available anytime. I'm totally not busy. I have no other clients. I'm not really that great of a real estate agent anyways, right? That's what it leads people to think. So we always kind of want to direct them into the right appointment time. Once we have that appointment set, so again, I would go something like, do mornings or afternoons work better for you? If they're like mornings, then I would give them, perfect, is Tuesday or Wednesday better? We're trying to meet with them probably in the next 48 hours. But the next 2 to 3 to 4 days, somewhere in there, sometime in the next week, set that appointment, kind of pinpoint what day, and then give them some appointment time slots that work best for them and you. Okay. Great. I'm really looking forward to meeting you, or I'm really looking forward to seeing you again. I know that you will be very impressed with the systems we have for finding just the right property for each of our buyers. In order to make our meeting extremely productive, I'm going to give you a little homework assignment. Okay. The buyer's going to be like, maybe, what is it? Right. You can do one of two things. You can either be like, hey, I'm going to send something over to you via email. I'm going to send a link to you via text. You can send them over a document, or you can be like, hey, do you have time to, like, do you have a piece of paper in front of you and a pen? Perfect. I want you to make 3 lists. Okay. The first list is our must-have list, right? When you think about your ideal home or property, any feature that you absolutely must have will go on that list, right? Does that make sense? So anything that you're like, I won't buy a house unless it has these items. Okay. The buyer's gonna be like, sure. Perfect. Now, the second list is the bonus list. These are features that you would love for the property to have, but you could live with or without them. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. Perfect. Good. The third thing is going to be the knockout list, right? Sometimes I call that the no-no list. This is going to be the list of features that you absolutely find unacceptable. Got it? You bet. Perfect is what the buyer is going to say, right? Wonderful. Now, word of caution here, be careful on how many things go on that must-have or the no-no list. The longer those 2 lists get, the more difficult it is to find the right property. There is no such thing as a perfect house. Make sense? Yeah, that totally makes sense. Perfect. Like I said, I know you'll be really impressed with my buyer systems, and this will be great fun working together. I'll see you on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Make sure to bring your lists. Okay? So the buyer lists. The buyer questionnaire, you want to kind of go over this with them before you set that appointment. Okay, so this buyer info sheet, we want to make sure that we have their names, their phone numbers. Is anybody else buying this house with you? Perfect. What's the best email to use? What's your preferred form of communication? Do you prefer that we text, that I call you, or that I send emails? It really depends on the buyer. Have you been pre-approved by the lender, right? We're trying to get to the bottom of, are they ready, willing, and able? What's your ideal price range and budget? What's the absolute maximum that you'd like to spend on the perfect house? And for some buyers, if they haven't been pre-approved yet, as we're going through this questionnaire, you may be like, instead of looking at the price range of a house, we may ask them their monthly payment. What's your ideal price range for your budget, or your ideal monthly payment for the budget? And what's the absolute maximum that you would be willing to pay on a monthly basis for the perfect house? Okay, do you have any questions about the financing aspect of buying a home? Okay, do you currently own a home or do you rent your current home? If they own it, do they need to sell it before they buy? If they rent it, we may want to ask them when their lease expires. Okay, because we're trying to create this ready, willing, and able. Okay, I feel like the buyer questionnaire here doesn't necessarily match with the list. So what we're going to do is when we set the appointment, we're on the phone with them. They're like, oh my gosh, I think I'm ready to buy a house. We want to go through this information with them on the buyer questionnaire to make sure they're ready, willing, and able. Because somebody who's like, oh my gosh, I'm so ready to buy a house, they may not be able to buy a house. Okay. Or somebody who's willing to buy a house may not be able to buy a house. Okay. They have to be not only ready and willing and able. So they have to be financially in a place where they can move forward. Their lease has to be in a place where they can get out of their current living situation, right? So all of those things need to be in place, and they have to be motivated in order to buy a property. If they're like, well, I really, really like where we currently live. We're in a really good situation. Our rent's really low. We like our neighborhood. We like our neighbors. We're really happy. We just feel like the next step in life should be to probably buy a house. Their readiness or it's just their motivation isn't quite there yet. So we need to help them like dig deeper. Well, what's important to you about buying a house? Like you say, that's the next step, but why is that important? And we may need to help move them in that direction by pointing out some reasons that would be good for buying a house. Like it's a forced savings plan where right now you're paying somebody else's mortgage, even though it's in a great neighborhood, it's a great low rent, you're still paying somebody else's mortgage and helping somebody else build equity in a home. So if we can get you into a home, then now that home's going to start, instead of paying somebody else's mortgage, you're going to be paying your own mortgage. And that home, not only are you putting principal in there, so you're paying down the balance of your loan. So even if your house stayed valued at the exact same amount, you're going to end up with this savings account, and down the road, you're going to be able to sell that house and walk away with cash out of that property. In addition to that, your home's going to gain value. Okay. Our real estate market's cyclical. There are ups and downs, but if you look at a trend line over time, it's always an upward trend. And what that means is that if we buy a house for $500,000, over the next 2, 3, 4 years, that home's going to continue to rise in value. So now, even if you didn't pay down any of your mortgage, you still have money available in that house for a future purchase, or to put in to sell it and save, or to whatever it might be. Now that home's worth $540,000 instead of $500,000, and you didn't have to do anything in it except live there and make sure it stays maintained. Pretty cool, right? So we may need to talk with them about how that process works and what that looks like, and help build their motivation for buying a property. Okay. So we want to make sure they're ready, willing, and able. The buyer questionnaire is going to help you do that. In addition, then once you determine they're ready, willing, and able, you've gotten them over lender's information. If they haven't been pre-approved by a lender, then we're going to schedule that appointment for that consultation and give them that homework of creating those lists of what's important to them in the property, the must-have list, the bonus list, and the knockout or the no-no list. Okay. Here is that pre-qualification slide. I jumped the gun a little bit like I normally do. So ready, right? So we want to make sure, as I previously mentioned, that they're ready, willing, and able. So for ready, can they make a move now, right? Is their lease close to expiration? Is the home sold or within 30 days of close of escrow? Are we going to list that property for them? Do they have their financing in order? Do they have their down payment? Do they have their deposit ready and available? Okay, that would make somebody ready. Willing would be like, are they strongly motivated, right? So that's what I just talked about, like getting them to a point where they're motivated. Some people are like, oh my gosh, yeah, my lease is expiring, my landlord's raising my rent again, or yeah, we have to move. Like our kids are getting ready to start school, and the school that we live next to is a horrible school, and that's not where we want our kids to go. Or maybe, who knows what it is. Maybe they want to move to a new city or a new location. So whatever that is, that willing, like how is their motivation? And then are they able? Able is similar to ready, right? Are there credit issues to resolve? Have they been on the job long enough? Do they make enough money? Are there any legal issues like divorce or name changes, issues they need to resolve? So before you put people and you take time out of your day to go like show them properties, right? You're investing valuable time and resources. We want to make sure that these buyers are going to be able to actually close on a transaction. We do not want to spend hours showing people properties who were never ready, willing, or able to buy in the first place. Okay. The best way is to ask a lot of questions and then give them a quick grade, right? Ready, willing, and able. That should be able, like in the next 30 days, would be like an A buyer. So they're ready, they're willing, and they're able to buy in the next 30 days would be like an A buyer. If they're looking 30 days to 6 months, that might be like a B buyer. And if they're looking like 6 months or more, then that's probably going to be your C buyers. Okay, we want to spend the most time with those A buyers. We do want to still build relationships with B's and C's, and we want to keep track of them. And our B's were probably working towards going and showing properties, but there's something that's preventing them from being able to buy right now. So we just want to kind of keep that in mind. So some questions that we might want to ask to determine if they are ready would be, do you currently own your home? If they do own a home, do they plan to sell it before they buy? If they plan to sell, is it on the market? If it is on the market, do they have an accepted offer? If yes, they have an accepted offer, when is it scheduled to close escrow? Are there any contingencies that still need to be met and removed from their buyers? What contingencies and what timeframes do they have? And some of these things they may not know the answer to. So if their home is currently on the market, especially if it's out of the area, it may be a good time to be like, hey, actually, if you want to just pass me over that agent's information, I can reach out to them and get all of my questions answered with regards to kind of what's going on with your home sale to make sure that we fall in line and that we help you smoothly transition from your existing home into your next one. If they don't have an offer, it might be how long has it been on the market, right? And get some details like price, listing information, etc. Right? Is this house, do they have it reasonably priced? Again, it's always a good idea to get their agent's information so you can talk with the agent directly. If it's not on the market, what has to happen before your home is ready to go on the market? And do you plan to sell it by owner, or do you want to talk about listing that property with me, right? If they're leasing a property, when does that lease expire? If they're going to be paying all cash, if the lease doesn't expire for a while, it may be, have you talked with your current landlord or property manager to see if they would allow you to break your lease early? Sometimes landlords are willing to do that because they might be in like a situation where they're actually paying below market rent, and the faster they can get somebody out of that property and in there paying real market rent, it might make their landlord happy. So sometimes if they just have a conversation with their landlord or their property manager, sometimes there is a deal that can be worked out if that's going to be the case. If they'll be paying all cash, are the funds readily accessible, or do you still need to secure them? Some people are like, oh yeah, I've got the down payment. And then you find out later that they're withdrawing funds from their 401k program, which is not a bad idea. I mean, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a good idea, but it's not a bad thing. However, it may take some time to get those funds out of that 401k account. So they may need to, you need to ask them if they've talked with the 401k manager to know what the process is to withdraw and the time frame looks like to withdraw those funds. Okay, that's held up escrow for me more often than not. Okay, if financing, how much do you plan to use for a down payment? Do you already have a mortgage lender you've been talking to? If yes, have you been in touch with him or her recently for a pre-approval? Was it a full pre-approval or preliminary? And you may not ask full versus preliminary. It may be more of a, did you submit your copies of your pay stubs? Did they pull credit? Do you send copies of your bank statements? If they're like, yeah, we did, then you know it's probably a full pre-approval versus a preliminary. And then also ask if you can get their lender's contact information and talk to them on your behalf just to confirm what types of programs they qualify for, what kind of loan they'll be using, and all the details that the lender's going to need in order to have a successful offer be submitted on their behalf. If they don't have a mortgage lender, do you have somebody in your bank and credit union that you would like to use, or would you like me to make some recommendations? Okay. So that's all. Are they ready? Right? Have they started the process? Willing would be some questions like, ideally, when would you like to be in your new home? How long have you been looking for a home? Is there anything that might hold you back from moving forward? Do you have children? How do they feel about your possible move? Who are the decision makers, right? Are there more people involved than just you? Are your parents giving you the down payment and they have a say in which house you're going to buy? Are there friends or coworkers or family members who will be helping you decide? If so, who, right? How willing are they? And then for able, we're going to listen carefully to clues that your prospects might leave in statements that they make, like, oh, yeah, we're in the middle of a divorce. Okay, why is that important? Because if they aren't divorced yet, the spouse who's still legally their spouse is going to have to sign off on the house that they're buying. So that's an important fact, right? Like, oh, yeah, I'm in the middle of a divorce. Oh, when's that supposed to be finalized? Okay, if you buy a house before that's finalized, are you okay with your spouse signing off that they know that you're purchasing a home? Are they willing to sign off that you're purchasing a home on your own? Okay, because that's going to be important. If they start talking about credit issues or, oh yeah, I was thinking about calling a lender, but gosh, the last couple of years have been really rough. You know, after COVID, I got laid off for a period of time, right? So we may want to dig further into that. Or, you know, I know you said you were laid off. Did you ever make any late payments on anything, right? Digging into that. Any recent job losses or changes, or any recent long distance moves. So those might affect their ability, and we may want to dig deeper into those items if we hear any of those as we're going through those questions for either ready or willing, and then dig into that to make sure that they're able. Okay. So there we go. So we want to pre-qualify our buyers. That's going to allow us to categorize them as that either A, that B, or that C buyer. Okay. Moving right along, step 1B is going to be that initial meeting with the lender. So any first step process for non-cash buyers is that loan pre-approval. The idea would be that we get that taken care of as soon as possible, and especially before we spend too much time with a buyer looking. Now, I will say that sometimes if you've got online leads, you've got a sign call lead, you may not like sign call lead. Oh, perfect. Have you been pre-approved? Well, no, then sorry, I can't go show you that property. Sometimes it's best to go show them a property first because it's easier to build relationship face to face than it is over the phone or via text. So sometimes showing them one or two properties, you know, getting that online lead, as I trip over my words, that right, those Zillow leads, sometimes going and showing them a property is a good idea because it helps build relationship, and then you can talk to them during that appointment at to clarify that ready, willing, and ableness. We can have that conversation while we're seeing a property. Now, keep in mind too that there is some safety concerns there about meeting people that you don't know at properties. So make sure somebody knows where you're at, bring somebody along with you, you know, have a taser with you, whatever that might be, some pepper spray, because there is some security about meeting strangers at properties. And it's always okay to ask them to send you a copy of their driver's license. Okay. Ask them just to like shoot a photo and kick it over to you just so you can verify their identity. Totally okay. I just want to make sure you guys stay safe since I am telling you that you may want to meet them at a property first. Now, oftentimes our buyers, they may be somebody that we talk to at an open house. It may be like a friend or family member. It's okay to sit down with them first and ask all these questions. It's always okay to sit down with them first. Okay. In addition to wasting time in a car with somebody or like showing them properties when we don't know if they're ready, willing, or able, the other thing is too, is even though they may be ready, willing, and able, they may be looking at a $700,000 house and they haven't been pre-approved yet, and they're really only qualified for a $600,000 house. Okay. And if we show them properties that are priced too high, sometimes it makes it really hard for them to accept the reality of the houses they can buy. Okay. Because if we start showing them like these amazing houses at 700,000, but they're only qualified for 600,000, like the disappointment there of not only not being able to qualify for the house that they wanted, but now walking through a $600,000 house is going to be sad for them. So we don't want to show them houses like that. Okay. And if we start showing them houses that are too low for what they qualify for, and then we've kind of wasted our time, right? We are like, oh, we've been showing them houses at 500,000, but they're really qualified for 600,000. Now we wasted time showing 5, 6, 7, 8 properties. So we don't want to show them too many properties before they go through that pre-approval process. Okay. We also want them to, as soon as they fall in love with a house, to be able to make an offer on that house. Okay, there's nothing worse than showing buyers properties. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm in love with this house. And then it takes 3 days to get that pre-approval done with the lender. And now that house is already wrapped up in an offer. And they're always going to visualize that house as the one that got away. And no house will ever live up to that property. So we don't want that to happen. And we want them to understand that we are the professionals and we understand the process, because we don't want to get fired because they think that we didn't handle it appropriately. So by explaining to them the benefits of making sure they're pre-approved ahead of time, or if they say they're a cash buyer, getting copies of their proof of funds, then we make sure that we're doing the process appropriately and setting them up for success. Okay. Ideally, even to as somebody who gets pre-approved, you can ask the lender to go a step further and pre-underwrite the file, which means they send it through and actually have an underwriter look at it, which allows you to make sure that not only is their file complete, but it usually allows you to move through the process much faster, and that you know you're not going to hit any hiccups when moving through that home purchase process with those buyers. In addition, when we submit an offer, if it is a multiple offer situation, a buyer that's already been pre-underwritten is a much stronger buyer than someone that just has a pre-approval letter. Okay, so there is step 1B, the initial meeting with the lender. Step 2 is the buyer consultation appointment. We usually recommend that you do your buyer consultation in our office. Okay, why do we recommend that we do that? Number 1, safety and security. And make sure that they're legitimate. That's why I recommend, hey, if you're going to go, sometimes it's necessary to show a couple properties to build that rapport and that relationship to get them in for the buyer consultation. But if you do that, again, safety and security is our primary concern. Ask for a copy of their driver's license. We meet in the office, it builds legitimacy, right? So it's different than meeting at like a coffee shop. Like it builds that, oh my gosh, I'm an actual realtor and I have an office and you can come to my office and meet with me. So that's a benefit there, right? So, right, we don't meet with our doctors in a coffee shop. So just that safety and security, professionalism, and control, right? So we're establishing ground rules with our buyers and we're staying in control of the buying process instead of allowing our buyers to roll over the top of us. So that's one of the reasons that we have the buyer consultation. And again, while we meet in an office instead of like coffee shop or their house or like in the car on the way to the appointment. So we want to have an official buyer consultation. All right. So the full buyer consultation, right? The points that you're going to cover during the buyer consultation meeting are you're going to verify the loan qualification process, right? What kind of loan are they utilizing? What's their purchase price? How much down payment, right? We want to verify that information. We're going to review the buyer's home search criteria. So remember those 3 lists that they were supposed to make? We're going to go over that with them. And we're going to ask what's important to them about those things. Okay, if they're like, oh, our must-have is a 4-bedroom home, then it might be, why is a 4-bedroom home important to you? Oh, well, we want to adopt children or we want to foster kids and we already have 2 kids of our own. So we want to make sure that we have an extra bedroom available for kids to foster. And then also a guest bedroom. Or we work from home and we need 2 bedrooms, like our bedroom and another bedroom, or 3 bedrooms for the kids, and then we need a home office, right? Because now we know that we don't officially need a bedroom. It doesn't have to be a 4-bedroom home. It could be a 3-bedroom home with a flex space or an office space, right? So diving into that, if they're like, oh, our must-have is a 3-car garage, be like, cool, what's important to you about a 3-car garage? Well, we know that in a normal 2-car garage, you can't actually fit 2 cars, and we want to be able to fit our cars in the garage. Perfect. The garage is important to you, right? Well, we also have a boat, right? And we want to make sure that a boat, we can park it inside, or that we have a place to park a boat. And you could be like, oh, cool. Well, instead of a 3-car garage, would like side RV parking behind the fence work for you as well for your boat? Or do you want your boat in a garage, right? So we can start digging in and asking those questions to clarify their needs. So learn the why. What's important to you about that is a really important question. When they start talking about like their no-no list, cool. Why is that important that the house doesn't have that? Okay, so let's dig into that. We want to, during this buyer consultation, learn all we can about our buyers, their background, their culture, their family, their lifestyle, right? Who else is making those buying decisions with them? We want to know those buyers. Our main point of our buyer consultation is going to be to ask questions. Okay, we want to make sure to introduce that buyer to your team. So if you have other agents that might be showing them property, if there's an office manager, the transaction coordinator, lender, escrow, title, anybody that you work with on a regular basis, we want to kind of set them up that we have these people. If you've got inspectors and stuff that you recommend, you may want to provide them your list of recommended inspectors. Again, we always recommend that you do like 3 people on all those lists. That way they can do their research now, so that when we get into contract on a property, you can be like, perfect, what kind of inspections did you decide you wanted? And did you choose inspectors for those inspections? Okay, right? Let them be in charge of that. You also want to educate the buyer about the process of buying a home from now until the close of escrow. So review that pending path with them, discuss agency and representation, the benefits to the buyer, handle any questions and concerns about the process. You're going to set showing and selection expectations, right? And you're going to familiarize them with sample contracts, addendums, disclosures, things that they're going to encounter during the home buying process. In addition, we want to make sure that we secure that buyer broker agreement. Okay, so that BRBC, the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement, is what it's called in California. We want to make sure that we secure a signature on that. I know in the past, Ed has shared with us the buyer values, where we can build our value to buyers of why they would want to be represented by an agent. So making sure that that buyer education process, that we're showing them what we can do for them. In addition, part of your buyer presentation should be, and we'll go over this, there's a place in OneZone where you can actually have buyer consultation packets that you can clarify, that you can personalize. But part of that process is going to be to explain to them what kind of homes you can represent them in when they go to buy, right? So we want to outline for them that, hey, new homes, for sale by owners, any home that you might be interested in, we can represent you on. Because a lot of buyers have this misconception that you can only represent them on homes that you have listed versus any home anywhere in the area. What areas do you service? What happens if they want to buy outside of that area, right? So we can clarify all that during the buyer consultation appointment, so that we're setting those expectations up for our buyers as well. Once we've completed that buyer consultation, we always want to try to be setting the next appointment. So it's going to be perfect. What's your week look like? Because I'd like to make sure I set aside time in case we come across any homes that match your criteria, that we can go see those properties. Okay. So we want to make them feel like kings and queens, and we want to make sure that you're always setting that next appointment to go show some properties, and that we're setting it up on a schedule that matches both yours and their schedule. Okay. So verify the loan qualification, review their search criteria, learn all you can about the buyers, introduce your buyers to anybody they're going to be communicating with, so they're not thrown off. Because what happens is we like go show them properties, or we're not available, and we're like, oh, somebody else is going to show you property, and like, what is going on, right? So set it up that, hey, for the most part, I'm going to be the one that shows you properties, but if I'm ever not available, I have other agents on my team that show properties for me. So if I'm not available, somebody will be available to show you that house. Does that make sense? Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So we're going to introduce them to our team, educate them about the home buying process, secure the buyer broker agreement, and make sure you set up and schedule that showing appointment. Okay. Make sure again that you're sprinkling lots of comments about representation throughout your presentation. Okay. You can build that value by sprinkling in there. I'm going to help you negotiate the best possible price and terms. I'm going to act as your advocate. My job is to help you get through the process and the paperwork quickly and successfully. Okay, right? So we're going to continue to build our value and sprinkle those in throughout the presentation. So they're like, oh my gosh, this person's amazing. They're going to help me through that process. They're not just going to like open doors for me, but they are going to be my advocate through this entire process. Oh my gosh, she mentioned repairs that, gosh, if we don't like what's in the inspections, that there's this option to like ask for the seller to do the repairs, and she's going to help negotiate that on our behalf. Oh my gosh, that's amazing, right? So we want to make sure that we talk about all of those things. Step 3 is going to be to make sure you get that representation agreement signed. It's not common practice in the state of California for all buyers to sign the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement, the BRBC. We want to make it common practice, especially in our office, that we get those documents signed. Number one, it protects you for doing your work. And number two, it outlines your responsibilities to your buyer so that they understand what your duties are to them. Okay. We are going to work hours for our buyers before we get paid. And we want to make sure that if we are going to work tirelessly on their behalf until they're in their new home, that the expectation is that at the end we are going to get paid. And we want that loyalty to go in both directions. I'm going to do my duties for them with the expectation they're going to do duties for me as well. Okay. We've gone over that BRBC multiple times, and we'll probably go over it multiple more times. But if you go to the YouTube channel, you can find the BRBC training where we did go through it item by item and outline how to explain it to a buyer, how to fill it out, all of those details. Super important document. Okay. It's all in the presentation. So if you make a big deal about it, then it becomes a big deal. So if you treat it like it's common practice, then generally speaking, buyers are going to follow your lead and be like, oh, this makes sense. I'm going to sign something. It's always important to make sure that we ask our buyers, like, have you signed anything with any other agents? If they're like, yeah, I think so, be like, perfect. Can I get a copy of that? Do you have a copy of it? Or who is the agent? Do you mind if I reach out to them? All right, request that on their own. One way to introduce the BRBC would be, let's move to the paperwork that allows me to represent you. I will give you an overview of each section. It's actually pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, just let me know. We're not going to attempt to interpret legal ramifications or give legal advice. We're only going to describe each paragraph or what each section handles. And if anybody's ever in doubt, you can always direct them to legal counsel. I highly recommend that you have a couple of real estate attorneys on your list of referrals so that when you hand them the list of potential inspectors, they also have some potential real estate attorneys in case they ever have any questions. You may also want to have relationships with like CPAs or tax professionals so that you can refer those as well. Again, anytime we refer somebody, we really want to refer at least 3 options to them so that they can pick their best option. So they don't feel like we've pigeonholed them into somebody that gave them bad advice. Okay. So again, let's move to the paperwork that allows me to represent you. I will give you an overview of each section. It's actually pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, just let me know. Okay. Super simple. After the buyer signs the representation agreement, then that's when you're going to set that first appointment to show them homes and set the expectations before they leave your office. Okay. We recommend that you probably don't show more than 6 homes at a time. You might change that. You may be like, I can only handle 3, right? Whatever that is. But you could always set it up that, hey, we're not going to show, I'm going to send you over a list of all the homes that match your criteria to the best of my ability to be able to sort through those for you. Pick out your favorites. And if there's a whole bunch that are your favorite, pick out your top 6. Okay. And the reason that we want to limit you to 6 is that we're going to send you the homes that match your criteria. And we don't want to spend all day. What's going to happen is by the time you get to like home 5 or 6, you're probably going to be pretty worn out at that point anyways. And because our system is so good, most of our buyers find the right home in fewer than 6. Okay. Right. So you could like build it up that way. You're going to be exhausted after showing 6 homes. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's a process. It takes a long time. You figure if each home takes about 15 minutes at the house, assuming that you've got a buyer that moves through them at a pretty good tick, and then it's 5 minutes between houses, that's 20 minutes for each house. So you can show about 3 houses per hour. 6 homes is going to take you a minimum of 2 hours to show. You're all going to be tired and hungry. If they have kids, they're going to lose it after 3 homes, I promise. Okay. After each showing and before you go to the next one, ask them to evaluate what they just saw, right? And once they decide on the property that they want to make an offer, talk about how you're going to prepare that offer and send it over to them. And then go over all the details of things they would make choices on during that offer. Make sure that you ask to how best communicate with them during your time working together, right? Again, is email, text message, phone calls, what's the best way? Give them a buyer packet to take home with them that includes a copy of the sample, like residential purchase agreement, disclosure documents, contingency removal forms, things that they're going to be seeing, and include that, the BMI form, I think is what it's called, but the buyer material issues form, which is the document they can fill out if they've got a concern about the property to make sure they get answered appropriately. Again, if you were on our, I think it was our residential purchase agreement, I may have just covered the BMI form directly. I don't remember, but we talked about the fact that nobody's ever used that form. I've never seen it in a transaction. I don't know that anybody's ever used it, but I highly recommend it. It talks about it in the purchase agreement that if the buyer has any issues with properties, that they should turn in that BMI form to you. Don't quote me on the acronym for it. It could be wrong, but the buyer material issues form. And so you want to make sure they have a copy of that at some point. You can let them know at this point too, right? We're going to set that showing that, hey, I'm going to set you up for a property search. So it's going to send you all the properties that match your criteria to the best of our ability to be able to do that. So there might be some in there, like the information's only as good as how it's inputted into our system. So sometimes there might be a property that pops up that doesn't quite match your criteria. Not a big deal. Just, you can chuck it in your trash box. You'll get a little portal to be able to log in and save homes and throw ones out that you're not interested in. You're going to want to sort through those homes. So maybe we're meeting with them on Monday. You might be like, I'm going to get that to you later today. And then what'll happen is anytime a new home gets ready to come on the market that matches your criteria, you're going to get an email alert that a new home has hit the market that matches, and you let me know whether you like that one or not. On Wednesday, we'll set our appointment to go see the first round of properties. Does that sound good? Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. I can start seeing properties as soon as Wednesday. Absolutely. Once you get that initial list, just shoot me over a message with the properties that you want to have on our Wednesday list of properties to see. Again, excuse me. It's best that we keep it to about 6 or fewer properties. It's going to take us about 2 hours. So just kind of keep that in mind. We usually allot about 20 minutes per house. That gives us some travel time to usually see the properties. Now, keep in mind too, that if they're in a bigger price range, like $1.5 million, it may take longer to see the properties. So you may want to allot, 30 to 45 minutes per property. So it's going to vary depending on size, or if they're looking at country properties with land versus in town. So we might want to adjust that. But for your basic track home, it's about 20 minutes per property to include travel time and seeing that property. So you may want to set up their expectations of, it's going to take about 20 minutes per property. So if we have 6 properties on our list, that's going to take about 2 hours. Okay. Right. Set them up. for success that way. So review the process with them. We're going to go see those properties. I'm going to provide you with an evaluation form, or we'll talk about each home as we move through it. I highly recommend that we don't talk about the home too much while we're inside the property or within shot of the door of the property, that will, like, stand in the driveway, or, once we finish one house, we can move to the next one, and we'll talk about the house that we saw, only because oftentimes there's recording devices present. People have Ring doorbells. They can hear what we're saying about their house, and we don't want them to know that we're too excited about their house before we make an offer on it. Okay, we don't want to give them all of our cards, right? So we might want to explain that to them. Okay, so we're going to set that appointment. We are going to arrange the showings, right? Using the buyer's 3 list, we're going to search the MLS for price range, minimum max bathrooms and bedrooms, and other must-have features. Or like our MLS allows us to be able to go in there. If they're like, I don't want a house with a pool, you can go in there and select to exclude any homes with a pool. Okay. Or if there's neighborhoods they don't want to be in, you can do a map search. You can outline the neighborhood they specifically told you they don't want to be in. Keep in mind, we can't tell them what is a good neighborhood or a bad neighborhood. That's going to be up to them. We can have references to like crime websites and stuff that we can send them a link to so that they can look up the crime stats and different things. But we don't want to steer them in a direction. That would be illegal. Again, don't show more than 6 homes per appointment. The buyer's going to begin mixing them up. They're going to be exhausted. And get the buyers to eliminate as you go. Narrow it down as you're arranging those showings. We have covered this in the past. We will cover it again, but we can go into Barry's. We can select the properties. I highly recommend you take those properties, you throw them into a cart for your buyer. I usually name it like the buyer's last name and the date that we're going to go see those properties. 2 reasons for that. Using a cart. Number 1, it makes it really easy to pull up those properties from my phone. Number 2, I can pull up that cart. I can kick them into the map search, and then I can route those properties, or I can pull them into Showing Time from there. And Showing Time will route them based on the best route. You don't even have to do any. And then you can put it into a map program that will then text you the route to your phone. And then you can attach your phone to your car and pull up that route and go property by property. It's so simple. So anyways, so lots of ways to do that there. We're going to then make sure we set up that search in the MLS. So they're going to get notification. If I've got an active buyer, if I've got that A+ buyer or that A buyer that's looking at homes right now, I want those properties going to them as soon as they hit the market. If I've got somebody that's like a B buyer, they're not quite ready, I want them to know what's going on in the market, but maybe just like once a day or once a week, depending on kind of how soon they're looking to buy. So you can set it up that they get new properties that come on the market once a day, immediately, or it could be like a weekly thing. Okay. But you're going to set them up on a search. The minimum option is going to be once a week that they should get a notification. Again, that's if they're not quite ready to buy yet. Again, if somebody's looking to buy right now, they're ready, willing, and able, they're going to get them as soon as properties hit the market. We're going to contact our database or social media with our buyer's criteria. Do not disclose your buyer's identity. Send a blanket email request, and you may want to follow up by phone call with your top 10%, letting them know that, hey, we're looking for, if anybody knows of a home or somebody who is thinking about selling a home that's 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms with an additional office space on a decent sized lot with a pool, please let me know. I've got a buyer looking for a property right now, right? We want to let people know that. Again, we can post it on social media as well. This is a way to generate additional leads, as well as find our buyer an off-market property, and we become the amazing agent that secured that off-market property. Okay. Any questions about that? Make sure you throw them in that chat box or reach out to me directly about how we do that. We'll dig in more to how to use Barry's. I kind of did a Barry's overview a couple weeks ago, so you can pull up that training. And as always, if you log your attendance when the class is over, you can make recommendations for future trainings that you would like to see, so we can get those on the schedule. Showing techniques. Make sure that you call ahead. and verify with the listing agent that you can see the property. Even if the property is vacant and says go show, I usually will send them agent over a text message and say, hey, I know the property says vacant, go and show. I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'm going to show the property on Wednesday afternoon, just so they're aware that I'm doing that in case something changes, or maybe they're getting ready to get an offer in hand. They know somebody else is going to show it. Anytime we approach a property, even if it's vacant, we want to ring the doorbell and knock loudly. Okay, I wouldn't recommend doing both. If it's an occupied property, pick one. I usually start with like knocking. I feel like it's friendlier for some reason. I don't know. And then if nobody answers the knock, then I ring the doorbell. If it's vacant, I may like just ring the doorbell and knock just to make sure that if somebody was there, maybe the seller's returned to clean up some things, or maybe there's a squatter in the house, we're scaring them away. Okay. Always announce yourself when you open the door. So you're going to open the door and you're going to be like, hi, it's Amy with Realty One Group here to show the property. Even if it's vacant, announce yourself. I have walked in on people countless number of times that weren't supposed to be at the house. So always announce yourself. Once I open the door and announce myself, then I allow my buyers to go into the property ahead of me. It's a safety and security issue, especially if I'm not familiar with the buyers. I want to keep myself between my buyers and the exit. Not because I don't care about my buyers and I don't want to protect them from something that might be lurking in the house, but because if my buyers are shady people, I want to be able to exit that property. Encourage the buyers to explore. Don't feel like you got to show them the house. I usually kind of walk through it with them, but usually behind them so that they can kind of lead the way. Watch and listen for buyer signals. What are they talking about? Are they pointing out a bunch of things they don't like? Are they talking about like, would their couch fit in that house, right? Like have, just kind of pay attention to those signals. Ask for feedback. And what do you think of this property? Oh, how do you like the kitchen island, right? Oh my gosh, we love the island. We've always wanted one. Perfect. How do you feel about the backyard? It looks like the pool. I know you said you wanted a house with a pool, but this is like all the backyard. Are you okay with that? Right? Ask those questions. You can turn on lights, encourage them to open closets and open cabinets, right? They're getting ready to potentially buy this house. They should know what the closet space and the cabinets look like. Anytime lights get turned on or windows get opened, doors get opened or closed, make sure to return those back to the position that you found them in before leaving. Always leave a business card behind so that the sellers know that you showed the property. Okay. I promise you the listing agent will be happier with you if that happens. Sometimes if you don't leave a card and the sellers didn't see you go in or out of the property, then they're going to be like, they call their agent and they're like, they didn't show the property. We left and we were inconvenienced and nobody even came because they didn't leave a card. So always leave a business card. You can always leave a note too if you're out of business cards. Bring some stickies with you, right? Something so that you can leave it. We usually leave the cards like on the kitchen counter, or if they have like a entry table, you can pop it on the entry table. I usually try to keep them in my car. And then when I get out of the car to go show the property, and oftentimes I'll put my key next to it or something, or my phone, so that I grab my phone and a card at the same time. So it's in my hand when I go to access the property, so that I remember to leave the card behind. It's a hard thing to remember. So there are some showing techniques for you. Some showing do nots. Do not insist on accompanying the buyer into every room. Give them some space, right? Don't state the obvious, like this is the kitchen. Don't insult their intelligence. But you may want to point out key features of the kitchen, like, oh, all the cabinets in the kitchen have soft close, right? So pointing out things like that would be helpful. I highly recommend that you don't disagree with your buyers. If they're like, man, this house color is ugly, or I hate the way this kitchen's laid out, be like, oh, well, that's my favorite layout. No, don't do that. Just be like, oh, what don't you like about the kitchen layout? Or yeah, I've actually got, if you decide you like this house, the color is pretty ugly. I have some numbers of some painters that I can refer to you. We could even, as part of the home buying process, get a quote for some painters to repaint the property. They're like, oh, great idea. Perfect, right? How you feel about it doesn't matter. It's how they feel about the property. Don't feel like you've got to defend the home or the property. Instead, seek to understand, right? Tell me how you would change it if it's yours. What don't you like about it? All those things, because it's going to help you narrow down what homes they're looking for. Don't skip a home if you've arranged to show it. And I would say you can skip it. Just make sure you message the agent to let them know that you're not going to make it. Okay. I don't feel any obligation to waste time of anybody's, buyers or sellers, or my own. And so if we've seen a property and there's a floor plan and they don't like that floor plan, and we've got two other homes that have the exact same floor plan, I'm going to have that conversation as we leave the buyers. Hey, so the next two properties that we have scheduled are all the same floor plan. Do you think we should skip those, or do you still want to see them? If they're like, oh yeah, we absolutely hated this floor plan, like there's nothing that's going to make us like it, so we should just skip those. Then I'm going to go perfect. Let me just message those listing agents real quick to let them know that we're not going to make it. And then I also have to let the last house know that we're going to be there a little early and make sure that's okay with them. Right. So just communicate that with your buyers. Be careful to show too many homes before your buyers eliminate one from consideration. So how I like to do it is we go see a property. What did they like about it? What did they not like about it? We go see the next property. What do they like? What do they don't like? Perfect. Do you like this one better, or did you like the first one that we saw better? Right? Ask them to like kind of eliminate. And if they're like, oh, we really like the first one better, be like, perfect. When we get to house number 3, or what did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Now, I know before that you said the first house was your favorite. Do you like this one better than the first house, or did you like the first house better? Right? Ask them to move through that process with you. Okay. We just kind of eliminate as we go. Sometimes it helps to give buyers like a little like half sheet with a clipboard, or a piece of paper with a clipboard where they can rate the houses, or even like put the addresses on a side-by-side column with like ways that they could eliminate them. So that they can kind of keep track of which ones they liked and what they liked about it and what they didn't like about it. It helps to keep them clear and helps keep their mind in control of what they liked and what they didn't like. Let's see here. So ask questions as you go, right? If there were no more homes to see, which one would you choose? Why, right? So we kind of already talked about that. Advantages to the approach. After the first home, you could always ask, oh my gosh, is this the one? And oftentimes they're going to want to see more because nobody wants to make an offer on the first house. After the second home, again, you could ask like, if there were absolutely no more homes, which would you choose from? If you had to choose from these, which one would it be and why? The goal is to just help to eliminate homes as you go. This is going to help you to or eliminate or greatly lessen the number of homes that you need to show. It's going to help them to clarify their must-have list or their no-no list. Like things may have popped up as they start seeing properties that they didn't even know they wanted or they didn't want. So it's going to help us to further define that list. This is also going to make it easier for buyers to say yes when it's time to make an offer, right? When we see all the properties, they're going to already have in mind which one was their favorite. And let's see here. So that's about it. We're not wanting to show them 50 or 60 homes. We want to show them like 5, 6, 7 homes and then have them pick the one they want to go write an offer on. So the further we can define their list of must-haves and things they like about properties versus things they don't like, then we can help eliminate properties for them. And if they start sending us properties that they want to go see that don't match their criteria, it's okay to point that out to them. It's okay to be like, oh, so I know you said on your no-no list that you absolutely didn't want a 2-story home. And the home that you just sent me was 2 stories with the master bedroom upstairs or the primary suite upstairs. Are you sure you're going to be okay with that? Are you okay with going up and downstairs every day? Right? Or whatever it was that was important to them about the single story versus not having a 2-story, right? So it's okay to ask them for permission not to show that property if it doesn't match their criteria, or point out the reasons that it does not match their criteria. Okay, step 7A is property selection. So spot those buying signals. Are they glancing at each other going, oh my gosh, I really like this? Are they talking about where they would place furniture, how they would use a room? Are they asking the kids to tell them which room they would like? Are they sitting on furniture, right? Like in the living room or the family room, or are you hearing them exclaim things like, wow, or oh my, or now this is more like it, right? So things like that, like trigger questions that they like this house. Maybe they have start asking questions they haven't asked at other properties. Like, do you know if this house has any offers? What are the property taxes for this house? I wonder what our payment would be for this house, right? Always have their lender saved in your phone. So you can be like, hey, we're looking at a house. It's, 560,000. Can you tell me like approximately what their payment would be on this one? Or maybe they ask to go back through a home again. Okay. Non-verbal buying signals would be things like, they're lingering in the house or a particular room. They're touching different parts of the house. They're touching their chins and nodding, right? They're starting to take notes. Maybe they haven't before, or they not taking notes if they were before, or maybe they're asking for a measuring tape to measure like windows or rooms or appliances or see if furniture will fit, right? So all nonverbal signs there. Once we kind of see that we found a house that they like, we want to help move that buyer into a decision-making process. So asking questions like, is this the one? Or how do you feel about this home? Would you feel comfortable living here? Oh my gosh, this looks like the right one. Am I right? Where would you place your armoire or your sectional, right? If they talked about, oh my gosh, I've got a huge king size bed with a dresser, 2 dressers, and we want to make sure that fits in our bedroom because we're really attached to that piece of furniture. Walking into the master bedroom or the primary suite and saying, hey, would your furniture fit in here? If it seems like a home that they like, and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. I think it would, right? Which bedroom would be Johnny's or Susie's, right? If they have children. Would you like to go somewhere to have a cup of coffee and talk about what the next steps look like? Right? Those are all ways to move buyers into a decision-making process. When it's time to make an offer, we want to make sure to ask closing questions like, are you ready to make an offer? Shall we make an offer on this one? Shall we pencil it up and see what it looks like on paper? Right? Do you want me to reach out to your lender and get what your payment would be on this property? Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Right? Securing a decision is going to consist of summarizing the needs, summarizing the benefits, and you're going to ask for that decision. So summarizing the needs may be something like, if we think back to when you started, you said you were tired of not having a guest bath. And the houses are so close that you're feeling hemmed in. So Steve, if you wanted to start your woodworking hobby again, and Michelle, you indicated that your children are getting older and you wanted them to have separate bedrooms, and you were tired of the long drive to the airport, right? So summarize the need. What did they say was important to them and the why behind it? Then you're going to summarize the benefits of the home. Oh my gosh, this home has an extra 3/4 bath or half bath. We don't have 3/4 baths for the most part. We have half baths for guests to use. Making sure that you've got not only a bathroom for you guys and a bathroom for the kids, but your guests don't have to use your dirty kids' bathroom. And you're a little further apart from your nearest neighbor. So you've kind of got that elbow room you wanted, especially with that RV parking on the side. And then Steve, you said you wanted that 3rd car garage so you had room for your woodworking. Do you think this garage meets that requirement? Right. And then there's enough bedrooms for each children, and we're still within 20 minutes of the airport, so you don't have to make that long drive anymore. Right. Um, so just summarizing that, right? And then ask for the decision. So just saying, hey, so do you think that you would be ready to move into this house in the next like 30 days? Or do you want like a 60-day close, right? So starting to ask for that decision. Okay. Step 7B is criteria revised. So, right. So after we show properties, if they aren't ready to make an offer and we've realized the change in the buyer's criteria, right? Like I mentioned before, something becomes a must when it wasn't previously on the list, or something's on the no-no list now that wasn't previously there. We may want to clarify, like, hey, I know that when we saw these properties, it seemed really important. We walked into 2 or 3 of them that didn't have a kitchen island, and you talked about how much you really wanted a kitchen island. So should we put the kitchen island on your must-have list? Right? If a buyer stalls, it may be, hey, what's holding you back from making an offer? It could be something fear where we need to clarify kind of what the process looks like. We need to answer questions for them. Maybe they're fear they're going to miss out on another property. right? And it may be something like, well, yeah, but waiting for, like, you said how much you liked this one and it had all your must-haves. Are you willing to miss out on this property to hold out for something that might be better? Right? You may ask a question like, what's your main concern? Right? And somebody may be like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like we've looked at enough houses. What if there's something better out there? I hear you, right? You're thinking that if you go with this one, you might be missing out on an even better property, right? Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. I understand your thinking. Here's the challenge though, if you'll indulge me. Let's say we keep looking based on that assumption and a few days go by or even a week, and you come to the conclusion that this indeed was the best fit, and we discover that it's sold already. How would you feel about that? Right? And just let them think about that for a minute. The reason that we have this system that we do is, which includes you making 3 lists, and why I carefully, meticulously review those lists with you, is that I want to make sure that I've done all I can to know your needs inside and out. That way, the very best matches we see are first. Does that make sense? How do you feel about moving forward with this property? Right? That whole like fear of missing out, FOMO. But let's revise their criteria if there aren't any good fits. I never talk a buyer into making an offer on a house where I don't feel like they really loved it. In fact, there's been times that I've talked buyers out of making an offer because they're like, well, gosh, I mean, out of the ones that we saw today, I guess this one was the best. And so I mean, I guess we can write an offer on it, and be like, no, let's not. Like, why would we write an offer that's just going to fall out of contract, or that's going to cause my buyers to be unhappy at the end of the transaction? Right? They're going to move into it and not really love it. So you can be like, hey, if we haven't found the right match yet, we can keep looking at properties. There will be new properties that come up on the market. So let's dig deeper into what we didn't like about these properties or what was lacking in them to figure out what we're really looking for, right? Revise that criteria list. If you've got difficult buyers, then if you've got a buyer that's like, there's no way I'm making an offer at full asking price. Sellers always overprice knowing that the offer will be lower. My plan is to offer at least 20,000 under the asking price, which might be unrealistic for the current market. It sounds like you're concerned about paying too much for the property, right? Well, certainly. I mean, the last thing we want to do is pay too much. Absolutely. I'm a consumer too. I don't want to pay too much for anything either. However, may I take a minute to address this? Right. We want to validate the buyer's concerns. We want to humanize ourselves as someone who cares about them and feels their way. Well, I guess so, but I'm still not making a full price offer, right? Shield. Don't worry. I'm not here to make you do anything you're not comfortable with. My job is to help you locate and negotiate and have a smooth and successful transaction. So let's take a look at the market data. Right. So then that's where we would pull comps for them so that they could see that, oh my gosh, this house is actually priced appropriately or below market, right? Whatever that might be. Do you see in the past 3 months, 5 homes were on the market, and out of that number, 5 sold and are already in escrow? This means that if no other homes were come on the market, there are only 1 month of inventory left. And on average, the final sales price to asking price ratio was 101%. That means that sellers are pricing their properties pretty close to where they should be for our market. Does that make sense? Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. Right. So make sure you have those stats. It's really easy to pull the stats for the area in which you're showing properties. So do you see if we make an offer for $20,000 lower than asking price? Oh, so do you see what would happen if we made an offer for 20,000 lower than asking price? Yeah, it would probably, the seller probably wouldn't move forward with it. Yeah, you're correct. And it's only going to frustrate our efforts in finding the right home for you. And it may cause you to miss out on this home. Oh, yeah, I guess. Well, I don't really want to miss out on this home. Okay, let's get started. When we find the home you choose, we'll revisit the market data again for each one that you think you might want to write an offer in. Does that sound good? Oh, yeah, perfect. Right? So we just need to make sure that we communicate to the buyer that we understand their concerns, that we feel with them, humanize ourselves, and then let's bring them back to the data. Okay. Buyer's market versus seller's market. Just know that buyer's markets generally have, this says 7 to 12 months. It's really, they're saying 6 months is a balanced market. I would say closer to like 3 to 6 months is going to be a balanced market. If you've got inventory that's 1 to 3 months, that's going to be closer to a seller's market where the sellers are in control. And more than 6 months is going to be a buyer's market where the buyers have more negotiating power in a traditional market. Okay. In the current market that we've been in for a while now, it's kind of funky because some houses are getting multiple offers and going really fast. Some are not. We've had periods where we've had like hardly any inventory, but homes aren't moving very quick due to interest rates, and then interest rates drop and they all suck off the market. So just know that you kind of need to know what the current market looks like, especially for each price range. So if you've got buyers looking in different price range, kind of really study the market for that price range and the area that they're looking for, because this is going to vary area to area, city to city, price range to price range. So just kind of know, and I would put it closer, balanced market is going to be 3 to 6 months. Really about 3 months inventory right now, because we were in such a seller's market for so long that the second property sat for longer than like 30 days. People are stressed. So really 3 months worth of inventory right now would be considered like a balanced market. Almost 2 months, 2 to 3 months. If we go above 3 months, then it's more of a buyer's market. We can negotiate closing costs. We're negotiating better terms in favor of our buyers versus better terms in favor of our sellers. So that's how that real estate market is going to work. Just kind of know what that looks like. Are buyers getting credits? Are sellers negotiating free rent backs? Kind of what's going on with that market is going to be your best indicator of what kind of market it is versus months of inventory at this point, because it's kind of throwing that all up in the air over these last 2 years. I hope you guys found this class helpful. Again, we'll dive into where to find that buyer's presentation so that you can tweak it and adjust it for your needs and personalize it. As well as I was just looking for my Rev Up schedule before I closed up for today. We have no class on Wednesday due to the office meeting. Zip Forms is on Wednesday. I was just looking at what I skipped with SkySlope. We at some point will pull up One Design. I'll show you how to access that buyer consultation packet so that you can edit it as well. So hopefully you guys found that helpful. If there's anything that you need help-wise, questions, feel free to throw them in that chat box. Make sure you log your attendance today so that we know who attended. And then you can always make suggestions on future trainings. You can always reach out to me directly as well if you have further questions or need any help or support with materials. I'm always here to support you guys. I look forward to seeing you guys on Wednesday evening, where we'll go over creating new files inside of Zip Forms. I may have already covered that already. We kind of talked about Zip Forms a couple weeks ago, so I may dive into SkySlope on Wednesday instead of that, because we already talked about how to send out signatures and stuff. So Wednesday evening is going to be, we're going to dig into how to utilize SkySlope, which is our compliance system for our files. So look forward to seeing you guys then. Hope this was helpful. And again, sorry I couldn't be here in person today, but know that I care about you guys, which is why we recorded this ahead of time. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.